ship was built in 1864, did 23 return journeys to Adelaide. It went into the North American timber trade for 6 years. It became an isolation hospital in Southampton for 30 years, and at that point they took the masts off and it stopped sailing. It then got taken over by the Royal Navy and renamed HMS Carrick. Got given to the Royal Navy Reserves as club rooms, and about 25 years ago it sank in the river in the Clyde, and they raised it and it got moved to Irvine. In 2000 the ship was facing being broken up in Scotland, and I started a campaign to save it at the time. A few decades earlier I'd been involved in an underwater search for an anchor which the ship had lost off Kirkcaldy Beach, now Semaphore Grange, in 1874, and we never found the anchor. It's mostly under metres of sand, but it meant I knew quite a lot about the ship. So when it came under threat in 2000, I already knew a fair bit about it, and took a decision that we weren't going to let the ship be destroyed.
Well, I first became involved in the Clipper Ship project in late 2002 when I saw an article in the Advertiser that was talking about the ship. Prior to that time I knew nothing about it, and I contacted Peter Christopher, who represented the group at the time, and offered to help.
My connection has been from 1962 when I discovered that the ship was available, and then in 1982 I actually went overseas and went on board the first time and discovered all my family history of the Bruce family particularly, as I found out that my great-grandfather was David Bruce, who had the ship built and named it, and he was the first captain, and then his two sons followed suit. One became my grandfather, Alexander, and then his brother John.
In 2001, the Duke of Edinburgh convened a conference in Glasgow. I went to that Glasgow conference representing our group. One of the important things that we were able to achieve out of that conference was that if anybody came up with a successful plan, that they could have the ship.
At that time, a British multi-millionaire who was involved in the travel game by the name of Edwards got the rights to restore the ship and get it put back in the water. Edwards gave up in 2007, and so our group, which had been sitting pretty much in limbo in that period, regrouped and got going again, but there was no access for us at the time. We were seriously looking at it from 2007. The ship was sitting on a slipway. It was inaccessible to a large extent. It was on a river that had silted up over time, and it was adjacent to some wetlands that certainly were a no-go zone as far as going in there and dredging the banks out to make it easy to get the ship off the slipway.
The ship weighs several hundred tonnes. The private landowner wouldn't allow access to his land to get to it. So there were those physical difficulties. We were in Australia and the ship was in Scotland, so all the volunteers involved, we were working after hours in a different time zone from the other side of the planet.
We devised a number of methods of getting the ship out. We looked at putting it on a barge and taking it out, and then we had to look at all the restrictions. A footbridge that was in Irvine just before the mouth of the Irvine River, which is only 16.7 metres wide when it's retracted to its most, its shortest dimension. And so we had the restriction of having to have a very shallow draft barge. We had this width limitation, and we had only 2 times of the year where the tides were big enough to float a big barge up the river. We had very little money, and so we had to design something that would work. And so we came up with a design of a cradle, which is what you see here today, which is based on prefabricating everything in Adelaide, a nuts and bolt type connection, so that it's a big Meccano set, so it's very simple to put together. It also had to have the ability to fit in shipping containers, so we were able to put the entire cradle in 5 40-foot shipping containers. We saved it from destruction. We preserved it in the sense that it wasn't destroyed. We got it here, and now we've still got to find a home for it.
We still have debts incurred from when we brought the ship out. Now that we're conducting tours through the ship, we're actually generating income. We use half of that income to repay debt and the other half to do ongoing projects, so we're never standing still.
If we had failed in our tender and they had not accepted it, the ship most certainly would have been destroyed.
I think when the ship was built, the people might have believed that it had a lifespan of 25, 30 years. We were coming towards the end of the era of sail, and they would have been absolutely amazed to know that the ship they built was so well built that it's actually survived over 150 years.
I think to be restored, or to preserve it and to save it, he would have been very happy, I know, to have saved the ship, because it had several times it was going to be destroyed. I think it's an emotional link, having discovered so much about my family, which I never knew, that I think there's a certain sense of maybe belonging and being part of the ship and its history.